Yes, I know, we shouldn't take best-of lists seriously. Aggregate collections of disparate views are misleading reminders that the second favourite film of the Oscar voters often gets the big prize. The films people really love are often also the films that other people really hate. Really, these lists of collected sentiment often reward the inoffensive and the broadly acceptable. The often actually unremarkable works that nobody dislikes, everybody agrees are good, but that doesn't mean they are interesting. This all being said, I'm still very fascinated by the Letterboxd Top 250. It is partially interesting to me because it comes from a specific sample, Letterboxd users, people interested enough in film to rate films on a dedicated social media platform for the medium. That is a selective audience that will give a specific perspective. The list, therefore, can be read as a reflection of the collective sensibilities. It is also interesting to look at how it diverges from the IMDb Top 250, as it, to an extent, includes fewer recent and more populist choices. The list itself is the work of one dedicated user, Dave Viz. Currently it is 8 years old, and in that time 451 unique films have graced it. The rules are simple. Be a feature film, have 5,000 or more user ratings. From that pool, the best of the best, those with the highest average scores, end up on the list. Only 250 of them, mind. After realising, through just being interested in film, that I'd already watched most films on the list, I decided to complete it. Egged on by how Letterboxd tracks your percentage viewed for lists, and even tracks this list among others in your user stats, and I wanted that sweet 100%. It would mean something, I guess, so I watched them all, and I'm glad I did it. I certainly didn't love them all. Some I actively dislike, but I'm glad I watched all of them. I'm especially glad, as the list opened me up to so many films I otherwise wouldn't have seen. The list itself really interests me. It reflects the usual canonical lists, with perennial favourites like The Godfather, its sequel, 12 Angry Men, 7 Samurai, The Shawshank Redemption, right near the top. But it also features less seen films, and has a good proportion of international cinema, even outside of established classics. So I thought I'd give 10 recommendations. These aren't the 10 best films on the list. These are 10 interesting films you should check out. They're all non-English language films, primarily due to that being often my preference, and because I feel Hollywood and the like has enough internal publicity. You don't need me to tell you that Citizen Kane is great, though I will. Citizen Kane is great. As of this recording, pleasingly only at 195 on the list, and I'm glad that it is there, it deserves to be, but I'm even more glad that so many things are placed above it, things people will seek out. In a break from tradition, I'm going to keep this list brief. These are recommendations. I need to watch them, so I'll merely give an overview and some brief thoughts. No in-depth analysis here, though some of these films will get their own stacks video essays at some point, I'm sure. So, without further ado, here are 10 films you should check out from the Letterboxd 250, with a brief reason why. Note, so some further ado, this is not in order of preference, but in order of me scrolling down and picking stuff, with the occasional scroll up going, oh, I wonder if. So, number 1, The Ascent. The Ascent is a 1977 work directed by Soviet filmmaker Larisa Shepitko. Tragically, she died in a car crash in 1979 while scouting locations for her planned adaptation of the novel Farewell to Meteora. The Ascent is her last film. It's a masterpiece. Notably, the third film by a woman to win the top award at one of the major European film festivals, winning the Golden Bear at Berlinale, the second female director to do so. The Ascent is a film set during the Second World War, a film that captures an ascent into despair and also expresses the need to uphold one's values. The ending of the film is deeply traumatic, showing us that our actions have wider consequences and we must do what we know is right, even when we are at risk. It is an unflinching, yet poetic film, and one cognizant of how war affects those around it, as well as those in it. Number 2, A Dog's Will. Yeah, seriously. This is primarily here because it gets a lot of visible hatred, which is bizarre because clearly most people love it. It sits currently at number 7 on the top 250. When you see it mentioned in the comments, which are thankfully closed at the moment, it is only to insult it. It is a reminder that the minority are often the most vocal, and that the internet reflects imperialist structures. This is a Brazilian film, one hugely popular in Brazil, that clearly speaks directly to its audience, but because of a range of depressing factors, even on the supposed democratic internet, the English language rises to the top. Those who feel that every film should be for them, because they are used to most things being given platforms being for them, reject these works. The same animosity is not given to the plethora of Japanese, French and Italian films on the list. Those are expected to be there, but lesser known Brazilian cinema, and I mean lesser known globally, that's rejected. When a little seen French movie hits the list, the vocal minority, ecstatic. When a Brazilian film with a large national audience that love it enters the fray, those with the loudest voices reveal a hypocrisy and cultural elitism. Now, I actually really like A Dog's Will. It's playful, funny, and conforms to my political sensibilities. You might hate it, that's fine. I have close friends that have seen it and not liked it, that's totally fine. It's not for everybody. It's special because it speaks so closely to a select group. And that's the kind of film that often isn't on these lists. So if you haven't, check this out. Widen your cinematic scope. Number 3. Woman in the Dunes. This comes from the experimental Japanese filmmaker Hiroshi Teshigahara, the genius that also made a 72-minute narrationless documentary about the architectural work of Antoni Gaudi called Antonio Gaudi. Woman in the Dunes is just beautiful. It is expressionistic and weird, it gets under your skin, it's enigmatic and bizarre, but it also has real philosophical depth and holds up well to progressive readings and analysis. Of the films I'm listing, it is one of the more seen, but it's such a unique work that I couldn't skip over it. It's a bewitching film of avant-garde symbolism that also works as a compelling narrative. Just great stuff. Number 4. WERCKMEISTER Harmonies. Co-directed by Bela Tarr and Agnes Hranitzky, this is just a masterpiece. Tarr's most known work is obviously the over 7-hour epic Saturn Tango, which is sublime. You should watch that too, though it falls into the category of films in the top 250 that you could accuse of being on there due to kind of sunk cost fallacy or Stockholm Syndrome. There are a lot of super long films on this list, with Hamaguchi's Happy Hour, which is great, being a very recent addition. Many of these very long films are brilliant. I think Saturn Tango is one of the greatest movies ever made, but it's hard to shake the idea that the ratings of these films become self-selecting. Who is sitting through a 7-hour film and then giving it a shrug of a review? Those willing to commit the time are more likely to appreciate it or feel that they did. Most people probably just don't ever try to watch Saturn Tango or trail off partway through. I will say, I'm personally proud of myself for my lukewarm Out 1 review. Yes, I am the kind of person that watches an over 12-hour film just to slap 3 stars on it. The Great Movie Pod calls me 3-star Steven for a reason, but WERCKMEISTER Harmonies. Oh, firstly, this film has the most astonishing soundtrack from Mihaly Vig. It is a film about music, spurred on from it, and the music matches up to this. This film feels very unique. It would be hard to label a film with an equal atmosphere. This one's just special. Like Tarr's wider work, it captures the romanticist ideal of the sublime, these things forever bigger than us that leave us in a kind of neutral awe. It is a film that considers our place in the universe, questions meaninglessness, and does so while still being beautiful. Maybe beauty, transcendence, and the things we can't articulate are what matter. This is why I love Tarr and Hranitzky's films, because you can't write about them or speak about them easily. They really capture that lies beyond words, utilising the wider aspects of cinema to evoke something rapturous. Number 5. Redbeard. It feels off to have an Akira Kurosawa film on this list. After all, isn't he acclaimed enough? Well, yes. But also, no. I include Redbeard because it is my favourite Akira Kurosawa film, and because I think it's criminally underseen. A couple of years back now, I watched through Kurosawa's entire filmography, so I say it is his best, with the weight of all of his wider works behind this. It's somewhat of a different film than what you may expect from Kurosawa. Those in line with his wider filmography, it's just the most seen ones, perhaps outliers. It is a period piece, but not a samurai epic. There is one scene of violence, and it is exceptional, but it works as it is a break from the norm. It's a film about a stoic and good man trying to do his best despite the weight of the world. The cinematic worlds of Kurosawa are often so hopeless and desolate. This is about ideas and ideals and hope in the face of that. It really feels like the culmination of so many of his previous works, of what he was trying to achieve, taking the best aspects from the lower depths, The Idiots, Drunken Angel, Quiet Jewel, and making an almost undeniable masterpiece. It just feels so well observed, and it has this endearing humanism. This film was also the end of an era for Kurosawa. It's Kurosawa leaving black and white behind. It's his last fully Japanese feature to have a significant budget, his last work with long-term collaborator Toshiro Mifune. His character is the film's heart. a subtle performance that allows others to grow around him, one in which silence and gestures speak so clearly, so profoundly. It's an amazing movie. Number 6, An Elephant Sitting Still. And we're checking in with the Long Movie Club, clocking in at 234 minutes. This is a commitment. It is practically perfect, though one of the most moving experiences I've had with film. This is Hubo's first and last film. He died to suicide. The film was presented by his mentor, the aforementioned Bellatar, in an emotional speech that you should really watch. This is a profound work about depression, one of incredible depth, with a superb sense of place. It is recommended for people who like Bellatar, but also for those who are fond of Zhang Zhanke. This film is Chinese, like those of his, and is about modern China in a similarly incidental way. The slow rhythms that echo through Zhange's work also echo through Hubo's film. It really is an astonishing work, one that is so long but utterly enthralling. It's as good as film gets. It's a hard sell, but trust me, you need to see it. Number 7, Jean Diamond, 23, Quai de Commerce, 1080 Bruxelles. I've expanded on my adoration of this movie elsewhere. Fundamentally, I think it's vital. Yes, it's the long cinema club again, but this work necessitates that length. It is a strongly political film, a searing indictment of patriarchal systems, and it is also just beautifully made. It's a different kind of film. It uses cinema to be purposely uncinematic, to confront the viewer and to address an imbalance between the viewer and the viewed. This film is a display of something unique that cinema can do, of what can be made about the concept of people sitting in the dark with something projected in front of them. It is a work of humanity and empathy. It's an angry work, but it also has this meditative feel as it embraces repetition. Describing the actual content may put people off, so just know that it is all about how it presents this. It is a film that shows you process, that makes you watch the extended thing, which is not what cinema usually does. It is still, for me, a unique film, an unparalleled experience. It's also an example of that phenomenon where that thing's been done now. We don't need to do it again. Quite simply, Jean Diamond is peerless. It is one of the definitional works of cinema. 8. Zed. From the longest title to the shortest title, Zed! It's a blast. This is an angry and political and expressionistic film, but it's so energetic and kind of fun, though depressing. It is a conspiratorial thriller in which you see the actuality at the beginning, you know what happens, and are thus exposed to how lies are created, how the truth is warped. It is an allegorical work, one in conversation with real events, but one that also pushes beyond them. It very much functions as a political thriller with perceptive and targeted points to be made, but it also just works as a thriller. It has an anarchic spirit that cuts through everything. It's a damn good movie. Such good movie making. A film you really need to have seen. Go watch Zed. Zed's great. Number 9. The Big City. Though I haven't seen all of his work, The Big City is definitely my favourite Satyajit Ray film that I've seen so far. Ray is most famous for the Apu trilogy, and then perhaps The Music Room. Those are masterful films. This, for me, is his masterpiece. The Big City is about encroaching modernism, a theme that I usually gravitate towards. It is a fertile ground for layered conflicts, and let's be honest, who doesn't love the times they are a-changing narrative? This is a nuanced and well-observed film, one about big city life, and how those big cities can feel so large and depersonalising. Therefore, there is a need to focus on each other, to pursue those personal connections. Thematically and narratively, this feels akin to the work of Yasujiro Ozu, with how delicately it presents familiar dynamics, cultural change and generational divides. The characters are multi-layered, allowed to make mistakes and be flawed. They have nuanced arcs that position the moral lens of the film, showing how people can let us down and betray themselves, and then uses these arcs as metaphors for societal shifts. The message and the fate of this is clear. Life moves quickly. External factors shift. We must focus on what is good, on morality and acts of kindness. This and our relationships far outrank materialist and traditional constraints. What a picture. 10. The Man Who Sleeps. I wanted to end the list with my most recent discovery. When planning out this project, this was the most recent addition to the list. It's one I hadn't heard of, and at 77 minutes long, it was a welcome finale after a slew of 4-hour-plus films. This is a French film from 1974, and it's really rather fantastic. One reason why I love it, and its inclusion on the list, is how it relates to another recent addition, the film that debuted at number 1. It's not there anymore, it's now at number 5. Everything, Everywhere, All at Once. I think that film is fabulous. It is a film about the importance of life in spite of it all, and how it has meaning. It is an affirming film about the need to live. The Man Who Sleeps is not this. It is a chronicling of a man who disengages from life, becoming detached and robotic. It is a decline into solipsism. Importantly, not an endorsed one. This movie presents a nihilistic spiral, but doesn't feel like a nihilistic film, one that glorifies any related attitudes. This is a tragic arc, an indictment of current systems where it is so easy to disappear completely. The real strength, though, is in the filmmaking. Firstly, we have this great narration. You don't see that often, where another character narrates the thoughts and experiences of the only person we really see. It heightens detachment and further trivialises this character. But we also have this meshes of the afternoon style, encroaching surrealism. The film warps and distorts in a way that precedes David Lynch, but is reminiscent of some of his stranger cinematic moments. This film feels very known at the start, capturing a familiar sense of ennui, familiar cinematic perspective, and then it folds into something more uncanny. It kind of makes me shiver to think about it. It's a dream of a film, an unfolding nightmare. You need to watch it. It's very good. So, those are my 10 films. 10 to watch from the top 250. Maybe you've seen all of them, maybe you've seen some of them, maybe you've seen none of them. So, what would you pick? What do you think needs spotlighting? And perhaps more importantly, what key works are ignored by this whole top 50 thing to begin with?